Gamers. Okay, so I think it's time to do a meta tier list. We have the Duelist Cup coming up pretty soon, so we do kind of want to have an idea of what the format is looking like. And as always, when I do these tier lists, I don't like to drop them like before the format starts. I prefer waiting for the format to start so we can actually see how things go, because a lot of the time we think it's going to be like in the TCG or like in the OCG, and Master Duel ends up having kind of its own format, especially in the ladder. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which I think is Cira. So I've seen a bit of discussion about Cira. A lot of people are saying that it's actually not tier 1 and that it's overrated. Now, I'm going to give you my opinion on this. I think Cira is tier 1. I think it's undoubtedly tier 1, and my logic for this is that when you have a deck that comes into the game and it like significantly changes the way people build their decks, the way they play the game, it changes so much of the landscape of the meta. I feel like it's not really fair to say that it's tier 2. Is everyone citing Lancia for Dinos? No, but now you actually see some people running Lancia. Not a lot of them, to be fair, but you see some people running Lancia for Cira. You see a lot of people running books, which no one was running before Cash, you know? So I definitely think Cira is really changing up the meta game. And I think the main reason for that is whether you think the deck is consistent enough or not, the fact of the matter is its turn 1 is extremely oppressive. Even though it doesn't set up much negates, what it does do is it kind of like turns off graveyard decks, which changes up the meta quite a lot. It makes a lot of decks a lot worse. It also makes some decks a lot better. Thankfully, the deck does not set up a lot of negates, so it is kind of weak to going second strategies. I would even argue if everyone was playing Cash, going second Cash is better. Now, right now, it is actually kind of varied, so definitely I won't say Cash is the only one in tier 1, and I do kind of want to address something because I heard some people tell me that I was saying Cash would be tier 0, which is not true. What I said is that it was going to change the meta significantly, making going first a lot more important, and I guess I was wrong about that. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't realize just how weak this deck would be to going second strategies. This deck being so good and so dominant in the format has made going second as a strategy a lot more viable, which actually pulls up a lot of decks out of Rogue and stuff like that. So I gotta admit where I was wrong. I was wrong about that. I never said it would be tier 0 though, so I don't want to hear anyone tell me I said that. I never said that, but I will admit going second is actually even stronger than it was before Cash. So despite the fact that this deck is tier 1 in my opinion, I think there's another weird tier 1 contender in my opinion, and here it is. I think, okay, this one people are gonna look at me weird. I think going second Scareclaw Cira, and like emphasis on Scareclaw, it's a Scareclaw deck that runs like 5 Cira cards. I think this deck is tier 1. It's like too easy to climb ladder. I'm most likely going to be playing Scareclaw Cash when the Duelist Cup rolls around. This deck has been giving me so many free wins. I've been testing a lot of decks just to kind of get an idea of the format, and when I start losing games while I'm testing those bad decks and I feel like, oh, you know, I might get a rank down soon, I'll just pick up this deck and get my wins, and then we're back and we can practice the other decks again. So this deck is a lot of free wins. It's just really good in the current format. Not only does it have a great matchup against Cira, but it also has a pretty good matchup against Pearly as well, as long as obviously you get into your outs or you have enough ways of baiting out the Pearly Noir. So definitely I think this deck is tier 1 right now. I know this is probably ultra questionable, but honestly this format is really tough to crack, so I definitely would like to hear what your guys' thoughts are in the comments, where you think certain decks should rank, because this was not easy at all. I had to discuss with a couple of people in the Discord to get a decent idea. Huge shout out to EAF in the Discord. Actually, he helped me a lot with just kind of like straightening out my thoughts, because it was really hard to pin down. Now, we're not going to stick in tier 1 too long. We'll get back to tier 1 later. Let's talk about Dinos. I did say going second is a lot better now, and Dinos are good at going second. So where are we ranking Dinos? After having played them and almost getting to Master 1 with Dinos, I was playing Dinos in Master 2, and I did pretty well. I did all right. I did pretty good. I think this deck is quite strong, but I still think it's Rogue. The thing is, I'm not a fan of going second Dinos in the current format, because some of the best cards at going second in the current format are cards like Lava Golem, which take up your normal summon, and even the Raw Sphere mode. But both of those cards take up your normal summon, and Dinos most of the time will need their normal summon, which means they're kind of delegated to playing just like regular Kaijus if they want to go second, and board breakers and stuff like that. And while those are not bad, like Dark Hole is really good in Dinos, you know, you can pop your baby and your opponent's field. I definitely think you can get to Master 1 with this deck. I just think it's going to take a lot more effort, so I don't feel super comfortable putting it in tier 3. And I'm going to show you, like, you'll see a lot of the decks in tier 2 and 3 look like tier 1 decks almost. Like, a lot of them are just insane. So Yeah, Dinos, I still think they're really good. I think they're super solid. As always in this list, pretty much every deck in here is going to be like playable to get to Master 1, and I do think Dinos can do it, whether you're playing a going first variant like the one I made with Arrowman Mike, or if you're playing a going second variant, you know, I still think this deck can make it. I just don't think it's much better than Rogue. Next up, let's do Sprite. Sprite is a little bit weird right now. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think Sprite is much better than tier 3. I wouldn't feel too confident going into the Duelist Cup with Sprite. I know a lot of people are playing Gishki Sprite right now, and people are like, where's the Gishki Sprite video? Where is it? And I'm not sure if I want to make a Gishki Sprite video, because at the end of the day, Gishki Sprite is just a very fragile version of Sprite. Sure, the end board is really nice, but your going second is a lot worse, like significantly worse, in a format where going second is actually pretty damn important. And your turn 1, while sure, it is like a lot better once you get your combo going, Sprint is now pretty much useless because they got rid of the Angler engine pretty much. So what you're pretty much doing is you're putting all your eggs into this one basket of the big old Gishki combo, and it's very fragile. It's very easy to interrupt. There's like so many like kind of like not bricks, but like just kind of like cards that are not super ideal that you have to run for it. I don't dislike the deck, and once it does get going and it does what it has to do, it is super strong, super oppressive, and your odds of outing the board once they set it up are pretty low. So I definitely don't think this deck is bad or anything, and I even think that you'd be all right if you're going to Duelist Cup with this deck. I just would rather not. I don't want to lose coin flips and then just have to basically scoop it up, which this deck just not really doing it going second. You're running a bunch of cards that lock you into attacking once, well, only attacking with rituals, which basically means attacking once. I'm not a huge fan of it. Next up, let's do what I think is like the second best going second deck in this format, and that would be Makono. I think Makono is top of tier 2. As crazy as that might sound, I think going second is so insane right now, and Lava Golem especially is like, it destroys Pearly, it destroys Cira. So in my opinion, it absolutely has to be here. I think Makono is incredible. Now, it's not the best deck in the world because, like, you know, if you make Makono go first, while they can set up some stuff, you know, some monster steals in an IP Masquerena and stuff like that, it's nothing too impressive. It's nothing too scary, and usually can be dealt with. It is kind of annoying sometimes that, like, they can be pretty hard to out on the field, especially with Huli on the field. That's why we got Huli over here. This card is basically just the most busted of the Makonos, right? I really like Makono. I think Makono is cool, and right now, it's, like, in my opinion, the second best going second deck. Some people would even say that it's maybe like a tier 1 deck. I think that's a little extra, but I do think it's that good that it could be tier 2. The thing that's funny about Makono is, like, depending on who you ask, it might also be like unplayably bad. Like, so I don't know, like, depends who you ask, I guess. But in my opinion, I think going second is just too broken right now. So it's just free wins. Tier 2 for sure. Next up, let's do Nera Runeic. I think Nera Runeic, while it's as strong as it's ever been, it plays really poorly into Cira, but on the flip side, it demolishes Pearly. So I'm feeling like Nera Runeic is tier 2, not even as good as Makono really, because you're never getting free wins with Nera Runeic. There is no free wins to be had with this deck. Every win you get with Nera Runeic is earned pretty much. This deck is actually a lot more complicated than people give it credit for, and it's a really, really strong deck. Still, like I said, it's as strong as ever. And despite the fact that I thought it was like top tier in the last couple of formats, in this one, I think with the Ciras being around and Arise Heart just basically shutting off this deck, as well as Dimensional Shifter being around, it's not the most amazing time for Nera Runeic. That doesn't make the deck bad. Don't look at this list as like tier 1 good, every tier under is bad. Like, that's not what this list is. Nera Runeic is still amazing. It's as strong as ever. But I think a poor matchup against Cira kind of puts you down a peg a little bit, since Cira is so popular right now. And speaking of top decks here, we might as well put the other elephant in this room up here. I think Pearly and Cash are like pretty even in terms of the meta. I know a lot of people are saying Pearly is just straight up better, and like I could kind of see why people would say that. Pearly, like, it can technically play through more interruption, although I find Pearly can be a bit easier to control sometimes, just because you just have to pay attention to make sure that they keep like making their hand smaller to a point where they can't really extend much more. And also, you know, as long as you ash their continuous spell, you kind of have like a pretty easy time dealing with them. Also, if you just chain any activatable to one of their flash spells, they won't be able to equip it to their plump, so it's kind of hard for them to make a noir if you know how to play around that. So I don't think Pearly is as as busted right now as people are making it out to be. I still think it's tier 1, obviously. I just don't think it's fair to say like that this deck is tier 2 and that Pearly is like just miles ahead of everything else or whatever. I just don't think that's true. A lot of the outs to Cira, a lot of the popular outs to Cira going second are almost, if not just as good against Pearly. For instance, Lava Golem is super good against Pearly. Now, there is the fact that if you out their Noir with a Lava Golem, they'll still get their trigger of the continuous spell and their field spell. So you kind of have to be careful about that. Sometimes you need 2 outs to deal with Pearly going second. If your deck is built to go second and you're seeing Pearly or Cash, usually you'll be kind of relieved. Like when I'm playing this, I'm more looking to play against these decks than I am against the decks under here. Like when I'm playing Scareclaw, Cira, I want to play against these two. And same thing if you're playing Makono. Like these are very predictable decks, generally speaking. Don't want to meander too much around here. Pearly's obviously amazing, a great pick for Duelist Cup. So is Cash. That's basically my point. And so is Scareclaw. Don't sleep on Scareclaw Cash, bro. Don't sleep on this deck. It's amazing. Oh, I just realized while talking, I was moving some things around. Anyway, let's do Branded Despia. Branded Despia is still good. Obviously, like, don't sleep on Branded Despia. Now they're down to 1 copy of Branded Fusion, which does kind of hurt. But I definitely wouldn't say the deck is suddenly, like, not good or anything like that. Still super solid, hard to deal with. Sets up a lot of interruptions. The traps that it sets up and the spells and stuff are just so annoying. They're crazy. So, like, I think Branded is still good. It's just like it's a tier 3 deck to me. It's better than Rogue, but I don't think it's quite up here. But it's still around. It's still playable, and you'll still get your wins. I think you can still play Duelist Cup with this. It's just going to be a bit more of an uphill battle than picking some of the decks up here. But Branded Despia is definitely not dead or anything like that. Moving on to Mathmech. Mathmech. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry, buddy. Look, I don't like to say it, but a Rise Heart makes it pretty hard for Mathmech to play. That being said, Mathmech is still really good at OTKing, going second, can play a lot of hand traps, a lot more than most decks can afford. So I certainly wouldn't say that Mathmech is suddenly dead. It plays pretty well into everything other than specifically like going second against Cira. And going first against Cira, Mathmech is actually pretty decent as well. So I think Mathmech is going to probably be like landing around bottom of tier 3, something like that. Like it's good. It's definitely good. I just don't think it's quite up here, obviously, because it has a really bad matchup into Cira. But I don't think people should sleep on this deck. I think like you'd be surprised at how many wins you could get with Mathmech. It's not like Cira is every single deck you're facing. At first, it was like 80% of the decks you were facing were Cira, but now it's looking like a lot more varied. So I feel like Mathmech is probably going to be looking a bit better than even I'm giving it credit for. But just based on my experience in ladder, I would say, yeah, it's Mathmech right now. Not looking the best. Let's do Ninjas. Ninjas were Rogue on my last list. And Ninjas have a really good matchup into Cira. They can play Book of Eclipse at 3. They really don't care about getting flipped face down because they can just contact fuse anyway. So Book of Eclipse is super good for Ninjas, and it's really bad for Cash. Cash hates to see Book of Eclipse, especially since Cash almost never has a negate for it. So I definitely think Ninjas went up. Now, I don't think Ninjas are suddenly like an amazing deck or anything like that, but I definitely feel comfortable putting them in tier 3. When you're facing Cash, when you're going first and you're setting up against Cash, you're real happy. Just that if you're going second, you still kind of just need to draw the outs to deal with either of these decks. And Pearly matchup is actually not that bad either for Ninjas, believe it or not. Flipping down the Pearlies permanently is really good, and you just kind of try to make sure that your opponent is wasting a lot of resources. But same case as Cira, if you're going second, you kind of just have to draw the outs, and it can be kind of tough, and Ninjas can be a little bricky. So I definitely don't feel comfortable putting them much higher than tier 3, despite the fact that I do think they're at their best right now, and they're a ton of fun to play. I don't think I'd be picking them up for Duelist Cup, but like if I was based, I would. Anyway, let's move on to Sword Soul. And I don't know about Sword Soul, man. I don't know about Sword Soul. I was trying to figure it out. Like my heart tells me that they're just top of Rogue. They're just top of Rogue to me. But at the same time, they can run so many hand traps, you know? They can run so many hand traps. They always have the out. Like, part of me wants to put them at bottom of tier 3. I think I'm going to put them Rogue, and I know it looks crazy, but it's just Protoss. Not like Protoss Declared Dark is not that good right now because of Cira going around or Makono going around. It's good against Pearly for sure, and it's good against Scareclaw as well. So, you know, like it's definitely not bad to just play Sword Soul and go Protoss Declared Dark and like have 2 interruptions up. but that's not really enough to deal with cash. So I think that's made Sword Soul a lot less popular in the current format, and for good reason. I'm putting it at top of Rogue, but you know, like, I'm a bit iffy on this one. This one I feel like is always really hard to place, because obviously if you're really good at Sword Soul, probably think Sword Soul is a lot higher, because like Sword Soul has a lot of lines that you can see. I know people that play Sword Soul always think they have like the biggest brains on the planet, so every time I talk about Sword Soul, there's always someone telling me how shitty I am at Sword Soul, and how they're just like, oh my god, bro, like, you just don't see the lines, bro. If you saw the lines, bro, if you saw the lines, bro, like, you put this in like tier 0, bro. So look, whatever, Sword Soul players, let me know in the comments where you would put this deck. I'm leaving it up to you. For me, I'm just going to put it top of Rogue, and I'll take the L on that one if I'm wrong. Next up, let's do Rika. I think Rika, it's like in high tier 3, right? Like, Rika's really solid. Obviously, they have amazing combos. They tribute your stuff for cost. You know, they'll have that negate that they can set up in the graveyard. So going first, they're amazing. Going second, they have a lot of extenders, which makes it so they can kind of play into Cira, but not having a graveyard is tough for them. So I don't feel comfortable putting them much higher than tier 3. They're kind of just like the you need to go first combo deck, but if I go first, I'm winning and there's nothing you can do about it. I'll put them in tier 3. I think top of tier 3 for them is pretty fair. Actually, are they better than Sprite though? Sprite has a good going second turn if you're not playing the Gishki variant. So yeah, I would say Sprite is better going second. So I'm going to actually put Sprite above Rika. But yeah, I think Rika is like a high tier 3. Still a good deck. Again, like, not sleeping on Rika here. Like, it's good. Please don't look at this list as like these decks are bad. That's not what this means, okay? Please. Let's do Trap Tricks. Trap Tricks, like, as much as I'd like to sleep on Trap Tricks, the fact of the matter is Trap Tricks is really good right now. It's very, very good. Being able to search Floodgate Trap Hole wins you the matchup against both Cira and Pearly if you're going first. And if you're going second, the thing that's really cool about, like, Trap Tricks is if you're able to just set a bunch of cards against a Rice Heart, like, next turn you can still win. You know, you can use your trap cards. It kind of depends on your hand for going second. There's also that card, that Trap Tricks monster that banishes temporarily, that can out the Arise Heart so that you can set up your shit. I'm not exactly sure what it's called. I forget the name because I don't play Trap Tricks. I don't intend to play it. But yeah, I definitely think this deck is actually like really good right now. Kind of slept on. I would put it like a pretty high tier 3. I think this deck is really good, but that's tough. You know, trap decks are really good right now with Thrust coming out as well. I think I'll put it right above Rika, and I'll just take the L from the Sun Avalon fans. You guys can let me know how crazy I am. But yeah, I'll put it right here. All right, so Pure Punk I think is really good and not to be slept on. I genuinely think it's a high tier 2 deck. I think it's better than Nera Runeic. They have a really good going first turn, obviously. They get to run a lot of hand traps. They can search the Ghost Ogre, and the Ghost Ogre is really good this format. They're just like a really solid all-around deck. Their going second is not too bad either. Playing into a Rise Heart can be kind of tough for them because they can't resolve Foxy Tune, but they have other plays that they have access to that they can do under a Rise Heart. So they're not completely dead, you know, facing a Rise Heart, and they have a lot of space for hand traps as well. They're a very consistent engine. I think it's just kind of like a great deck right now, and this might be the worst. I think Punk, like Pure Punk right now, is probably better than both Dragon Link and Nera Runeic. They need their graveyard a little bit less, you know? They're a combo deck that sets up a bunch of interruptions, and they can also go second pretty well. Like all three of these, Nera Runeic so-so, but Nera Runeic can go second. It's just like you're still getting into that control game. So, you know, all three of these decks have a good turn 1 and a good turn 2. The thing about Punk is it plays into a Rise Heart a lot better, I would say, than something like Dragon Link, where if you have no graveyard and you have no, like, if you have no out to a Rise Heart and you're playing Dragon Link, you don't have that much that you can do, especially if you're playing through like that Banish and the Fenrir Banish. It doesn't take much really to stop Dragon Link if they don't have a graveyard. So for that reason, I feel like Pure Punk is a little bit better. Kind of debatable again, like Foxy Tune not being able to resolve is tough, but Pure Punk does have a lot of plays that they can do under a Rise Heart. So I'm a bit, I know this one looks weird. This one looks really weird. I don't feel good about it, but you know, we're just going to keep pushing through. Gonna keep moving through. I'm putting Pure Punk here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's do Flawanderies. Flawanderies. Flawanderies is still good. They're still good. They're still good. Obviously, Flawanderies doesn't care very much at all about Arise Heart, which helps. They also don't care about Maxi, which helps a lot too. I mean, I can't lie, bro. I think, man, they've got to be above Mathmech at least. I was going to put them in Rogue, but I thought about it a bit more and like, they're just good right now. They're just pretty good. Like nothing. It's Flaunderies. They're still here. They're still pretty good. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. Look, I don't want to talk about Flaunderies too long, so we're just gonna move on. But yeah, this one here, Labyrinth. I think this deck is like kind of bound to be hit pretty soon. I like have no doubt in my mind that Labyrinth is tier 1, probably above Scareclaw Cira. Like, there is not a doubt in my mind that Labyrinth is tier 1 right now. This deck is just crazy. Trap decks in general got a pretty huge buff from Thrust coming out, and just this format in general just being kind of nice to trap decks. And yeah, Labyrinth is just kind of nuts. It's kind of insane. I don't know really what to say other than that. This deck has just been everywhere in Master Rank, and I think it's going to be everywhere in the Duelist Cup as well. I really would not be surprised if next ban list we start to see some hits to Labyrinth, because it's very overrepresented. I'm seeing it so much in ladder. If anyone's in Master Rank, let me know in the comments if you guys have seen a lot of Labyrinth, because I've been seeing a ton of them, and I heard the same from a lot of people in my Discord, so I would not be surprised if they got hit in the next ban list. Honestly, I really like this deck, or at least I did at first. Now I'm seeing it so much that I don't even want to play it anymore, because I'm just like seeing so much of it that I'm tired of it. It's kind of like the Master Duel disease, right? When you see a deck too much and it's like really hard to beat, it gets annoying. They kind of turn every game into a grind game, and even if you're able to win that game, you kind of still have to go into that grind game and just kind of play their game, unless you have the blowout cards that completely stop them, like the Harpy's Feather Duster. The one thing that's nice is like you can search the Harpy's Feather Duster with the Thrust, but that requires them to activate a monster effect, which means they've already started activating their trap cards. So it's just a really, really good deck in this format. There's really not much else to say there. Next up, let's do Exo Sister. Exo Sister is another really good going second deck. I would say better than Dinos at going second, just because it has a bit more consistency, even though they do need their normal summon, so they also can't run the Lava Golem. They do have more consistency than Dinos, and that consistency does help a lot. I think it puts the deck above by a lot, actually, because going second is so insane right now. I would say probably around here, like around Branded and Ninjas. Let's do Under Rika. I think Under Rika is fair. I mean, Exo Sister, like, you guys already know what this deck does, basically. Wipes your board, makes Magnifica, and goes for game. That's what it does, and it's very consistent at doing it, so that's why I'm putting it here. There's really not much else to it. Next up, let's do Heroes. Heroes are the heroes of Rogue, and they're still in Rogue. I think right now Dinos are actually a bit better than Heroes, personally. Personally, I think Dinos are a little bit better, so we're going to put them here. Next up, and finally, actually, let's do Valence. Yeah, I don't know why I put this unplayable tier. There's not a single deck on my list that is unplayable, so sorry about that. That thing is just going to stay empty, I guess. We have Valence over here, and Valence, they're really good. Low-key, like maybe like right under Sprite. They have a good going second turn. They can play Lava Golem. Going first, they can set up their stun stuff. They might even be better than Sprite. Like, honestly, I think they might actually be better than Sprite. They probably have more consistency than Sprite right now, because Sprite, you know, lost so many copies of its stuff. Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to put Valence above Sprite. Valence are that good right now. They're really, really solid. Going first, obviously, their board is just like stupid. It's silly. They get the Fossil Dyna. They stop you from special summoning. They have a bunch of interruptions. They're just like really, really annoying when they set up going first. And they have a pretty good going second turn too. Like I said, they can run 3 Lava Golem if they want to and just blow out your shit. So they have a good matchup going into Cira, going into Pearly. Yeah, the one thing is, if they set up the Arise Heart, the cards don't go to the face-up extra deck. They go to the banish pile when the Pendulum cards leave the field. So that does make it a little bit more difficult for them. But again, they can run the Lava Golem, which is like a pretty huge factor, in my opinion, for this format. So yeah, that's where we're going to leave it. Tier 3 is looking massive. Tier 1 and 2 looking about the same size, and Rogue is looking a little bit small. I mean, obviously, there's like a lot of Rogue decks that I could have put here that I didn't put. Like, it's just, there's too many to count right now. Really, going second is so good that pretty much any deck that you can run some good going second staples in and just like kind of like wipe the board and do your thing and go for a game is going to be up here. Like, I didn't put Numeron. Numeron is probably like a high Rogue deck, like around Dinos, I guess. You know, like, so there's just a lot of Rogue decks that I don't have on here. I can't think of every single one of them. Instead, I preferred putting the decks that I think are a bit better than Rogue, and there's a good variety here, and all these decks are solid, and they make it kind of hard hard for these two because it's not like you just have to prepare for 2 matchups. There's a lot of decks going around right now, and you can always get jump scared by a Flawanderies or get jump scared by a Mathmech player when you're playing like something else than Cira specifically, you know. So it's definitely a pretty varied format, more varied than I expected before Arise Heart dropped. I think they actually did a decent job at hitting the consistency of Cira enough to make it so like it's not just the only deck being played, while still, in my opinion, being a tier 1 deck. But anyway, guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. The Duelist Cup is pretty soon. I think actually it's starting today, isn't it? In fact, the Duelist Cup has already started. Let me correct myself. It has just started today. So hopefully this video is useful for you guys. And yeah, that's going to be it from me. Thank you for checking out the video. Huge shout out to everyone supporting. You guys are awesome. And peace.